you can spend their time. I appreciate the verses that were read by Betty this morning, saying that we continually offer the sacrifice of praise to our God. We show who we value and the things we value with our time. We attach time to value. We say that things that are classics, they are timeless. They transcend time. And then we say that things that we don't want to do, they're not worth our, go ahead and say it. Yeah, they're not worth our time. And everybody wants to let the good times roll. We want to have good time. And so when we talk about how the kingdom is calling you, that God is inviting us to participate in the kingdom, we need to be all in. And we're going to look in this sermon series in 3 specific ways that we need to be all in to answer the kingdom calling. Jesus said, whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it. Now, what exactly makes up a life? If we're doing kingdom calling and we talk about what you need to give, and we say the things of your life, that's a really long sermon series, okay? We're not going to have enough time to get into all that. But we've picked 3. And the first one that we're going to highlight is called time. What you do with your time. The rest of it, that's called discipleship. The rest of your life that you give to God, that is called your discipleship. And I want to invite you into discipleship and following Jesus today. But first, we're going to talk about time. Now, I know it sounds like, all right, there he is again. There's the preacher always wants my time. The preacher always wants me to show up. Can I just tell you that this is not that sermon? This is not a sermon guilting you about what you do with your time. What you do with your time is between you and God. I'm not here to try to guilt you into being in this building. As a matter of fact, what I want to do is I want you to realize that what you do out there with your time says a lot about how you view God and what he's done in your life. An hour of church on Sunday morning doesn't make a disciple. The average time for a Sunday service in churches these days is about an hour. And the U.S. Census Bureau has calculated that people spend about half an hour on their way to work, to commute on average. So to and from work, people spend an hour in their cars. So if you do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, that's 5 hours for you to be an employee. So just 1 hour in church a week, or 2 if you're one of those super spiritual people. By the way, Wednesday nights are starting up again. We hope to see you in small groups. All those, they're all coming. But there are many ways to track your time. Your employer may have like a time clock. There are stopwatches. There are binge watches, okay? Netflix has a timer. I don't know if you knew that, if you ever started watching, and it's like, are you still there? And I'm like, don't judge me, Netflix. Okay? It's my day off. I call that my snack timer. Whenever Netflix is like, are you still doing this? I'm like, time to get another bag of chips. We have different ways to mark our time. So one of the ways that we look at our time is in our past. The things that have happened before us. And Jesus met with a woman at a well in a region of Samaria. She had a past. Jesus starts this conversation with her, a conversation that she is shocked by. She's like, you shouldn't even be talking to me. I should not be worth your time. You're a Jew. You're a guy. We shouldn't be having this conversation. I don't know what's happening right now. She says, Jesus, what are we doing here with this time? And he says, go ahead and call your husband. She says, I don't have a husband. And then Jesus talks about her past. He said, you've had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true. She's got a past. Now, before we get too difficult on this woman, before we're too harsh with her, remember that in this day and age, women didn't leave the men. How did it work? Men could write a certificate of divorce for any reason they just felt like. That was one school of thought. If your wife burned your dinner, she shamed you, and you could write her certificate of divorce and send her on her way. So this is not necessarily a woman who has made a whole bunch of mistakes. Maybe she has been mistreated. People have written her off time and time again. Her past is filled with rejection. Her past is filled with brokenness. Her past is filled with hurt. But Jesus doesn't look past her. He invites her to have a conversation with him, to take time to sit with him. And if you've got a past like that, you may not know who you can trust. You may not know who you can believe, and you may just be going from one relationship, whether it's a significant other relationship or friend relationship. I don't know if you've ever had a bad friend, somebody that burns you in the past, and you don't even know who you can trust. Jesus says, all of that is your past, but I'm not afraid of your past. I'm here to heal your past. And this is what he says to her. He says, the hour is coming and is now here. The time is here when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And the Father is seeking such people. He is saying the Father is seeking people who will worship him. And he's saying it to a woman who's got a very difficult past. Can I just say that your past is not too difficult for Jesus to be in a relationship with you? He wants your time. Now, you may not be entirely proud of everything you've done in your past. Anybody identify with that? All the perfect people in the crowd, speak up. Okay. Maybe it's not what was done to you, but you know exactly what you've done. And you may feel like, well, you gotta hide it before you can go to church, right? When you come to Jesus, you don't have to hide your sin. He knew every sin before he even came to earth. So he says, let's not hide your past, let's bury it once and for all. All of your mistakes, let's get them gone. Some people would just say, forget your past. Like my buddy Timon from The Lion King says, you got to put your behind in your past. Some people just say, let's just put your past behind you. Just forget it. Just forget about it. Just forget. That can be very difficult when that relationship affected you and who you are today. Maybe if it was one of abuse, are you just supposed to forget that you were abused? The world is afraid of the past. And so they say, just try to bury it, just try to ignore it, just try to forget it. And Jesus says, we can take it away completely if you will give it to me. Give me your past. When the past hurts, Jesus heals. We learn in this conversation with the woman at the well that God is not afraid of your past. He's not looking for people with a perfect past, because if he was looking for people with a perfect past, he wouldn't find anybody. He comes to us in spite of our past. So we need to give him all of what has happened before us. And you know what happens to that past? The one that you're afraid people may find out about? Your past, when you give it to Jesus, it starts to preach. It starts to become your testimony. It becomes, when they say, but I heard that you were like this, and you say, were. That's the key word. I was like that. Those are things that happened to me in my past. But that is not who I am today in Christ. Those things do not define me. Jesus defines me. And if he can look past my past and invite me into a relationship, that is what the church is supposed to do as well. So you use your past to preach his grace. There's no past too bad. There was a guy named Paul. You remember him? He actually murdered a Christian, and then Jesus says, I'm picking you. So Paul said, I'm the worst of sinners, and yet God chose me to go around and preach his grace. Your past is your message. Now, it has been said, the past is history, and the future is a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. I didn't come up with it. Looks great on the cross stitch, though, doesn't it? No, maybe if we move on from our past for a moment, we talk about right here, right now. You may not feel like it's a present. I don't know what struggles you're going through. You may not feel like you have a bow on top of your head. You may feel like you have a target on your back. That people are really, really messing with you. You may identify with a man in the Bible named Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector, and he's sitting in his booth, and Jesus is walking by, and he saw the man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. Now we talk about kingdom, the kingdom of Jesus, calling you, calling your schedule to be laid down before him. Matthew had no kingdom. You see, he was a Jew, and the Romans were like, man, those Jews are very difficult people to try to rule. They don't want to pay their taxes. They will revolt at the drop of a hat. So what we need to do is we need to find some Jews who are willing to betray their countrymen and collect taxes for us, because if we walk in there with all of our Roman garb and we say we're collecting your taxes, they're going to go crazy. So let's just get some of their own countrymen to do it. And Matthew said, sign me up, because that's a lucrative deal. So he was collecting taxes that were funding the building of pagan temples, the palace of Caesar, the Roman army that was occupying the promised land. He was in charge of collecting the money to fund the Roman world. And so the Jews would reject Matthew and say, you're not one of us. You're not one of us, meaning you're not even a child of Abraham anymore. You don't have this kingdom. If you love the Romans, go be with the Romans. Now, the thing about that is the Romans didn't exactly like Jews either. They saw Matthew as a means to an end. We just want you to collect taxes. We don't want you to be a Roman. We don't like you. So he detached from one kingdom, wasn't welcomed in the other, and he's standing there all alone in his present. He's sitting in a booth, and his booth is now his prison. I don't know what decision you made and how you wanted to identify, whether that was through your career, and maybe you've reached a dead end in your career and you say, there's no more advancement for me here, and I put so much time and effort and energy into this job, and now I don't even like it anymore. Or maybe you let go of your job, or your job let go of you. Maybe you were let go and you were fired, and you say, well, now I don't know what to do. Or you retired, and you think, I don't know exactly who I am, because for 40 years I was doing this one thing. I knew who I was. Right now, you may feel like you don't belong in a kingdom. It's not a bad thing, because if it's a kingdom of this earth, you don't want to belong to it anyway. You only want to belong to the kingdom of Jesus. So if you feel uncomfortable here, in every earthly kingdom that vies for your attention, that vies for your time, you can say, I think there's a different person calling me into a kingdom. And you're sitting in this booth, and you know that if you stand up from this booth and you walk out, that would be admitting that you made a mistake in the first place of putting too much attention there. Which is more embarrassing, okay? You don't want to do the walk of shame, like, oh man, I'll have to walk out and admit to everybody that I made a mistake going this far in this kingdom. But which is more embarrassing? Making that mistake once, or continuing to make that mistake over and over again when He's calling you to? He's calling you to a different kingdom. It's okay to take that decision and say, I don't know how I got where I am right now, but I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want this kingdom. Comedian Brian Regan talks about that rule in chess where you can move a piece, and if you keep your finger on it, you can look all the way around it, and then nope, you know what, I don't want to do that, and you can take the piece back. And he's like, I wish we could just do that in life. You know, you could just walk in and be like, give me all your money if you're going to rob a bank, and then the cops show up and you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take it back. Free takesy-backsies. Can I just say, if you've gotten yourself in a situation where you're like, I wish I could take it back, Jesus says, why don't we do it right now? I like how quickly we go from Jesus saying, follow me, to Matthew saying, yes. There isn't a debate there. He doesn't mull it over. He just immediately gets up and follows him. So I have a question. How long are you going to sit in that booth, in that prison, with no kingdom, and you're being invited to follow Jesus? Maybe you haven't made that decision yet. Maybe it's because you're afraid of your past. We've already said that doesn't bother him. That's why he came for you right now. Now is the time to get up. So, some of us may have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, some would say. But somewhere along the way, we got a little sidetracked. So we would sing, I have decided to follow Jesus. Cut me some slack. Cut me some slack. Well, there's somebody in the Bible for you as well. A man named Peter. You see, Jesus said, I'm going to die. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to die. And all of you are going to abandon me. Because that's what's going to happen. Whenever you strike the shepherd, the flock scatters. And Peter, oh man, Peter would write checks with his mouth that his body could not cash. He would write in the future and say, no way, Lord, in the future, even if all these other suckers, because we all know I'm the best disciple, if all these other punks leave you, I will never. He's trying to talk about what kind of disciple he's going to be like in the future. And Jesus says, Peter, I mean, before the rooster crows this morning, you're going to deny me 3 times. And I like how emphatically Peter gets, though, and whenever he says, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times, and he gets emphatic and says, even if I must die with you, you're going to get arrested and die, I'm going to die too. Wow. Bold words. Bold words now. But the future. The future can be scary whenever the future actually starts to move from there to here. And so Peter finds himself in a situation where Jesus is arrested. He's like, oh, he meant it. He's actually getting arrested. And then people start saying, are you one of those followers too? And what does he do? He makes the mistake. Jesus calls his future fail. But that did not disqualify Peter from being a follower of Jesus. So Peter would deny. He's like, I don't even know him. I don't even know him. I don't even know him. And the rooster crows, and suddenly he's probably thinking, I said I would not do this. Have you ever had those words echo in your head? I will be a good follower of Jesus in the future. And then you find yourself in the future going, I said I was not going to be here. How did I get here? And you may think, well, now that's a part of my past that I'm embarrassed about, and I run from Jesus. And Jesus says, I knew all along. And I'm inviting you to still be a participant in this kingdom. I'm still calling you to give me your future, to be all in. And Jesus would come back to Peter after the resurrection and say, hey, Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord. Peter, do you love me? That hurt. Peter said, yes, I love you. And Jesus said, okay, that's all gone now. You see, Peter was acting like the future was uncertain whenever he denied Jesus, but when he saw the resurrected Jesus, he knew the future was completely concrete. Everything was crystal clear for him now, and he said, I love you. And he would follow Jesus, even to be crucified, to the point where he said, I'm not worthy to be crucified like Jesus, so turn me upside down. Whew. What changed in Peter's future? Resurrected Jesus. That changes everything about your future. So maybe you're not unsure of Jesus' future for you. That's not your problem. Maybe you're 100% sure about the future that you have planned out for yourself. Maybe that's what it is. You think, oh, I know what Jesus' future is for me. I told him. Well, Jesus did have a conversation with one man. He said to another the same words that he gave Matthew, follow me. But this man said, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, leave the dead to bury their own dead, but as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Now that seems kind of like a oh, Jesus, that's insensitive. His father just died. Can't you wait like a couple of days? That's not what's happening here. This man's father is still alive, probably not even sick, but the man knows in the future, I'm going to have responsibilities. Maybe he's the oldest son. He's like, well, I have to eventually take care of my father. I have to bury my father. I have to manage the household estate. I have to do all of these things. And then whenever my future is finally the way that it needs to be for me to follow you, and Jesus says, you're holding on to your future instead of holding on to me. You need to give me your future and let me map it out for you. I need you to follow me into your future. There are a lot of ways that we try to hold on to future plans. And they can dramatically change our attitude when the plans don't work out the way we wanted them to. When your future does not go the way that you had planned, when your child's future, when your grandchild's future, when your employment does not go the way that you had planned, do you invite Jesus into your life and say, I'm still all in on this kingdom? Or do you still cling to a future that doesn't exist, trying to hold smoke in your hand? Like we say with our mouth, because I know he holds the future, life is worth the living. Why? Because he lives. The kingdom is calling you. Are you putting the kingdom on hold? Are you saying, not now, not until everything is ready? And Jesus says, well, I'm ready to come back. You better be ready for me to return. We need to get that out of the way. All the rest is just future details. You serve in the kingdom today. I love how Paul puts it. Our future holds victory no matter what. No matter what future God has planned for us, there is victory. He says, for to me, like to live is Christ. I get to serve. I get to work hard for this kingdom. I'm all in. And if I die, then I go to my reward. So I don't care what God has for my future because I trust that he is good. Whether it's your future failures, which you're gonna have. You're gonna let God down, and he doesn't look at you and say, you're gonna let me down in the future. He says, I love you no matter what happens, what you do in your future. Now, that's not a blank check to just be like, well, I'm just gonna go do whatever I want in the future. Try to avoid those mistakes in the future if you can, but know that they do not disqualify you. You can always come back and be reinstated. Another way to say it is this. You give God your time on earth, and he will give you eternity in heaven. You answer that call and say, I will follow you right now. So today, on your chair, you may have seen one of these. It's a clock with a crown on it, because worship, what you do with your time, says a lot about who you worship. You crown something. Something in your schedule gets a crown. The most important part of your day. And so up here, we have 3 offering plates. Old school offering plates that we dusted off. And this one back here represents your past. Maybe you're like that woman at the well. You've got a past of hurt, hang-ups, trips. You think that your past is so bad that Jesus couldn't possibly really be calling you into this kingdom. And he says, yes, even you. You're the people that the Father is seeking to worship in spirit and in truth. So you need to lay your past down. The past can be an interesting place to visit, but it's a dangerous place to stay. Give it to Jesus. Maybe you're unsure right now of the decisions you've made that led to where you are. You haven't decided to follow Jesus yet. Now is the time. He's calling you. I don't know how much time is over here. He could come back any day. He could come back before the end of this day. Come, Lord Jesus. I don't know how much time, how big this plate is. You don't know how much time you have on this earth. But I do know that all the time you have left on this earth is worth it to place in this space. And say, God, I'm all in. I'm answering the call to give to the kingdom with my time. Wherever that leads, I trust in your faithfulness. You can tell a lot about somebody by how they use their time. Jesus used his time on earth for you. Will you use your time on earth for him? As we sing these next few songs, after I pray, I want you to get up, take this, and place it somewhere in these plates. Whether your past needs to go to him, right now you need to follow him, or you need to serve him in the future. Will you stand as we pray? Father, this morning we want to answer the kingdom call through our time. Your calling is like an alarm clock that is waking us up to call us out of our booth, out of our past, and into a glorious future that only you know. We trust you. We have faith in you. Lord, would you change our time together? In Jesus' name.